You know, a few years ago, I wrote a sort of science fiction novel called The End of the Age. It was based on biblical truth, but it was nevertheless there. And one of the scenarios, if I could use that term, I had the president committing suicide on television because he'd cut the funding for asteroid research. Guess what? They're doing it in Washington, and NASA said, you've taken away our money, and if you want to keep asteroids from hitting you, we recommend you pray. Hey, how about that? It sounds like science fiction or a Hollywood movie, but it's all too real. The threat of a massive asteroid slamming into the Earth. Terry.
If one of these space rocks did hit, it would cause enormous damage and could kill millions. NASA scientists are telling Congress that they need more money to find these deadly threats from space before they strike, and Ephraim Graham has the story.
Scientists shared a grim reality with lawmakers in this week's asteroid hearings on Capitol Hill. There is almost no way to stop asteroids and debris from hurtling towards Earth. NASA Chief Charles Bolden was asked what his agency could do if a large asteroid headed for Earth was discovered with just weeks before impact. He responded, quote, "The answer to you is, if it's coming in 3 weeks, pray." Scientists say the only way to protect Earth is to have decades of advance warning of a major object heading our way.
With 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years of notice, it's actually pretty straightforward to deflect an asteroid.
Witnesses told the Senate panel that without increased funding for NASA and support for satellites and observation programs, we could never detect them in time to prevent mass casualties.
And the ones that I've been talking about, had that happened over a city, let's say New York City, we would have 7 million casualties. At least, whatever the population of New York City is, they would be gone.
In 2005, Congress told NASA to find 90% of these space rocks. NASA says because of budget cuts, they won't be able to get that done until at least 2030. NASA has so far detected only about 10% of near-Earth objects that are wider than 87 miles across. It's estimated there may be hundreds of thousands that remain unknown. Scientists say that while the odds of an asteroid strike causing mass casualties and destruction are very small, the consequences are large, so large that the risk must be taken seriously.
I just again want to point out that there's a 30% chance that there's a 5 megaton or so impact that's going to happen in a random location on this planet this century. So this is not hypothetical.
Ephraim Graham, CBN News.
When you read the New Testament and you see the prophecies that Jesus Christ outlined in what's called the Olivet Discourse, there's nothing else that'll fulfill the words that he spoke except an asteroid strike. Nothing will do it. The sun won't give its light, the moon won't shine, the sea and waves will be roaring, men's hearts will fail them for fear at what's coming to pass on the face of the earth. There's nothing that'll do it except a hit, and it doesn't take much. The one I had in the book, Terry, was 0.6 of a mile. It was 1 kilometer, just 1 kilometer, 0.6 of a mile.
We're talking about much larger.
Oh yeah, much more. I mean, these are those things, they call them extinctors, because if it gets to a certain area, it wipes out all life on Earth. Mine had a more limited range, but I had a brief moment with Steven Spielberg, who was also doing one. I said, would you like to do a little research? Here's what's going to happen. I gave him a copy of my book, and he had another one called Armageddon, or whatever they call. You remember that one? They had a movie.
I do.
But he read my book. He had his splash down off Virginia Beach. I had mine splashed down off the California coast. I think if we're going to get them, let's get them on that coast instead of our. But he had his in Virginia Beach.
Well, there's self-protection in all of us.
That's right. People were fleeing up to the mountains, but we laugh at it. But ladies and gentlemen, it's real. And if we're ever going to spend money, they think that's what wiped out the dinosaurs. It was a hit. Probably some place around the Yucatan Peninsula. There's a great big hole in the ocean down there where one of them probably hit. It doesn't take much, but a fairly good size. The one that flew over Siberia and exploded, would have been enough of one, I think, to wipe out London. So we're talking about ghastly, because these things are so huge, they're so hot, and they explode so loudly that it's the force of many, many, many hydrogen and nuclear bombs. So anyhow, we don't want to scare anybody, but read the Bible. Read what Jesus had to say about the last days, and then that'll fulfill it. And also, I don't know if that End of the Age is available, but you ought to read it. It's interesting.
Oh, I'm sure they can find it nowadays.
You think so?
I think so.
Well, I don't know if they still print it or not, but I'd like to, bring it back again because it's very timely. Well, while NASA is concerned about asteroids, Israelis have been worried about Palestinian rocket attacks. Lee Webb has more on that from the CBN newsroom. Here's Lee.
Pat, Palestinian terrorists launched rocket attacks into southern Israel today before President Obama's meeting with Palestinian leaders. The president wants to talk about a peace deal, and he spent much of the day with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Chris Mitchell has the story now from Jerusalem.
Day 2 of President Obama's visit. He started at the Israel Museum, looking at the ancient Dead Sea Scrolls. So far as Israel's concerned, things seem to be going well. One commentator remarked, if this is the way we greet Obama, what's left for the Messiah? Any previous animosity between Obama and Netanyahu appeared to be gone.
I think the Israeli people are very happy that President Obama is getting off to a new second start with Prime Minister Netanyahu, and I think that that's very important. And I think it's a more realistic appraisal of the Middle East.
Behind the photo ops, the goodwill and the massive security are the major issues facing these two nations. The civil war in Syria, no negotiations between Israel and the Palestinians, and the most serious issue of all, the threat of a nuclear Iran. Obama and Netanyahu met for 5 hours on Wednesday.
All options are on the table. We will do what is necessary to prevent Iran from getting the world's worst weapons.
The two also discussed Israeli-Palestinian negotiations.
Israel remains fully committed to peace and to the solution of two states for two peoples. We extend our hands in peace and in friendship to the Palestinian people.
President Obama has been saying all the right things.
And I hope it's more than just trying to curry favor with the Israeli population. I hope that it's a realization that Israel has legitimate needs, and the United States has to be more cognizant of them when making its own national security interests.
But Palestinians see the growing U.S.-Israel ties as a bad sign for them, and they're not happy about the president's visit. Early Thursday, Palestinians launched rockets at Israel from the Gaza Strip, just ahead of the president's trip to Ramallah to meet with Palestinian leaders. Author Michael Widlansky says Obama's visit sends a message to regimes in the area.
He realizes now that in the sea of sand of the Middle East, Israel is the only anchor Western democracies have. He's made a lot of mistakes. Syria, Egypt, Jordan is destabilizing. Turkey's a morass. He realizes that there's only one place he can rely on for good news and for forward progress. That's Israel. That's a pragmatic decision by an ideological man, and I think that's a good move.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Pat, your reaction so far to the president's visit?
Well, I think it's optics, Lee. I think the president knows that his constituency in the Democratic Party comprise a number of very well-to-do Jewish people, Jewish businessmen, Jewish film producers, and so forth. And his statement about going back to the 67 borders and that sort of thing have set them on edge. And I think he understands that if he's going to have any success, that he's got to get people like Chuck Schumer, for example, in the Senate on his team. And so this is a big peace offensive, more for his own Democratic Party. But I hope something good comes out of it. I mean, it's amazing he and Bibi Netanyahu were at each other's throats, and now they're having a kissy fest over in Jerusalem. It's just amazing. I mean, how much love and heart fluttering is going on. It'll remain to be seen what he actually does. But, you know, Elliot Abrams was a brilliant analyst. He'd worked, I believe, for Reagan, also Bush, in high policy in the State Department. He said, look, peace between the Israelis and the Palestinians is not the #1 issue among the Arab nations. They've got other items that they have to be concerned about. And I think right now the most important thing is the clash between Sunnis and Shias. And the second, obviously, is the fact that a Shia theocracy is about to get a nuclear weapon. And that's the big deal that I think the Saudis and others are concerned about more than whether or not the Palestinians and the Israelis make peace. Lee?
Officials in Cyprus are working on a new bailout strategy. That plan could include a loan from Russia in exchange for natural gas leases and selling off assets from its most troubled banks. Russians have a massive amount of money in Cyprus. A vote on the plan could come as early as today, but Cyprus is on borrowed time. The European Central Bank is keeping Cypriot banks alive by letting them use emergency funds, but the ECB says Cyprus has to come up with a bailout plan soon or it will cut off those funds. The banks will be closed the rest of this week while officials work on a plan for that loan. 4 Democratic senators are asking President Obama to have the Environmental Protection Agency cut back on some of its regulations. The rules set tough new standards for power plants that use coal. The senators are from coal states. West Virginia's Joe Manchin is one of them. He writes, "Not only would this rule have a devastating effect on our coal production, this rule will endanger the reliability and sustainability of our electricity supply." The coal industry and its supporters have criticized the EPA for targeting coal unfairly. Pat?
Lee and ladies and gentlemen, the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, is out of control. It has been run by doctrinaire leftists who do not regard the mandates of Congress as anything really special. They make the rules they want to, regardless of what Congress has given them. And that is a problem. They're out of control. And so when one left-winger resigns, they're going to put another one in her place that'll be just as bad. And they have a battle against American industry, but especially fossil fuels. And the truth is, we can't operate our power plants without fossil fuel. We have to have them. There's no way that windmills and whatever else, biomass and these other things are going to fill the gap. It's got to be coal and it's got to be oil. And fortunately, natural gas is coming along, but it's not there yet. And sure, clean coal is important. But they have a rule, if a new power plant comes online, they have what's called a new source review, which means that the people who are building that plant have got to go back to square one. Even if they put a scrubber in or something like that, they've got to go back and do a new source review, and it'll cost millions and millions of dollars and involve the utility and all kinds of red tape. And it's just a nightmare. So something's got to be done to get that agency out of the business of dominating our industry. But they want to essentially shut down. That's their goal. They want us to have a more pastoral, rural kind of existence. And if a couple billion people around the globe die from starvation because of it, that's just tough luck. Lee?
No tours at the White House anytime soon. Republicans in the Senate tried to get them started again, but Democrats voted down a measure that was part of an overall government spending plan. Republicans say closing down the tours was just a political move to make the recent spending cuts look worse than they really are. Many conservatives have pointed to other areas, Pat, where wasteful spending could be cut without any real harm to the public.
Lee, I just can't believe the American people are just a bunch of fools. This is such a gimmick, and what these Democrats are trying to do is they say, we will not allow you to make any alteration to this sequester. We won't let you slide some money over out of one pocket into another to take care of defense, to take care of the Park Service, to take care of immigration, to take care of necessary health care, or in the case of the few $1,000s to let tours come through the White House. They won't allow it. The Democrats say, no, we're not going to allow it. Why? Because they want the pain to be intense. They want everybody to suffer, and then they hope to to be able to blame it on the Republicans. This kind of stuff. Why don't we work for the good of America? Lee.
Pat, several states have issued warnings to investors about a company called Profitable Sunrise. It promises investors risk-free returns of up to 2.7% a day on their money. ChristianMoney.com editor-in-chief James Paris warns that the company, though, targets Christians by using gimmicks like Bible verses and images of Jesus.
What many of these schemes do is they actually pay the current investors by bringing in new investors. I know this is a cliche, but if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And when you're looking at, bank CDs paying 1%, and someone's telling you that you can earn 2% in just one single day, and this person doesn't even have a physical office location, is not providing you with a prospectus, is not a licensed investment advisor or securities dealer, these are all very obvious tip-offs.
Paris and a nonprofit fraud investigation group say even pastors have fallen prey to this scheme. Profitable Sunrise has allegedly collected more than $100 million from investors. For more on this, you can go to our website at cbnnews.com. Pat?
Thanks, Lee. Ladies and gentlemen, beware of these scamsters, especially scamsters in religious garb, quoting the Bible. I mean, run from them. They're all over the place. There was an outfit, I think it was known as Greater Diamond or something. It's been investigated, and they were supposed to do this, that, and the other. And the government finally steps in against some of these organizations. But this Sunrise thing, they just can't change the laws of economics. They can't do it. I had a friend of mine told me, he said, listen, they've got this system where they're able to get the information in their huge computers about a half a second before the West Coast, and therefore they can trade quickly on leverage or arbitrage or whatever term you want to give it, and they're making all this money, and you really need to invest in this. It's so good. Well, I didn't have time. I guess being lazy is a good thing, because I didn't have time to investigate it, and there wasn't any way I was going to do something about it. Lo and behold, some very fine people got hooked on that deal. It was all a fraud. And listen, it just doesn't happen. they just, there was what long-term capital was, a big one, supposed to have these quants, these geniuses that came out of Harvard or MIT and whatever, and they were able to have these giant computers to do all these systems. No, it blew up. It always does, Terry.
It's too good to be true. It's too good to be true.
Too good to be true. Well, listen to it.
Yeah,
that doesn't mean you can't make money if you pay attention. There are opportunities to make money, but not this crazy stuff. It's not going to happen.
The Southern Baptist Convention is expanding north. Since 2002, Southern Baptists have spent more than $5 million planting churches around the region. Another $800,000 has been committed for this year. The New England region is skeptical of the South and increasingly indifferent to religion. Still, over the last 11 years, more than 100 new churches have been planted. Same-sex marriage is likely to become legal soon in New Zealand. Lawmakers recently passed a bill that allows gay marriage in the second of 3 votes that has to be taken before a bill becomes law. The third vote is likely to be little more than a formality. New Zealand already has civil union laws that give many legal rights to gay couples. Well, you can always get the latest from CBN News by going to our website at cbnnews.com.